Good morning. I hope that you are having a blessed day. Thanks for joining me for daily devotion. So today we're going to continue talking about John's Gospel in the story of Lazarus. We're going to be in the 11th chapter, and I think on Monday I mentioned that the story could be named some different things. I mean, we call it the resurrection of Lazarus or something like that, but it could be called the tears of Jesus. It could be called the Mary and Martha weep, or the faith of Mary and Martha, something like that. So I just wanted to move into part of the text today and talk a little bit about um, Mary and Martha and how they're viewing Jesus and how they respond to Jesus, even though they're disappointed and they don't understand. One of the names I mentioned on Monday that we could call this story is disappointment in the divine. And how so often we have expectations, we want things to work out one way and they don't work out that way. And then we have to decide what we're going to say, what we're going to do. And we have different responses to that. Some of us say, oh, it's God has a plan. Some of us say, God is with me in this time. Some of us say, and we all deal with that differently, I think. And so let's just read what Martha says, and we'll move through that. So we're going to pick up the story in John 11 at verse 17. So we're at chapter 11, verse 17. Jesus has heard that Lazarus is dead. He had heard he was sick. Time frame in there probably allowed 4 days to pass, but Jesus now knows he's dead, and he's going to go see him in Bethany, or go see Martha and Mary. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. So what you want to see here in this verse is that it's only 2 miles. Jesus could have easily gone there right away, but he delayed, he stayed, he didn't go, and so that's important, even though he could have. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. So that's what we're going to work with today. Martha doesn't know Jesus is going to raise Lazarus. She doesn't know anything other than this, that she had faith that if he would have been there, her brother would not have died, but he wasn't, and so he died, and she's still confessing faith. And I mentioned on Sunday that she's confessing faith, but she's not confessing faith that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead, based on what she says next, which is, I know that he's going to rise on the last day. So she's not expecting Jesus to raise Lazarus from the dead, but she still has faith, even though he's disappointed her and let her down and not met her expectations. And I think in that sense, her grief and her testimony of faith imitates our own, probably imitates yours at times when you can feel that same thing and make those same confessions that even though you had expectations or desires for what you wanted God to do or hoped God would do or were wishing God would do and they didn't happen, you've been able to confess faith. Or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've struggled with that and been challenged by that. And And then I think Christ's question becomes an invitation. Do you believe this? And we get to listen to Jesus' words. I think this part of the text offers an important part of faith, or an important element of our faith journey amidst struggle and doubt and grief, excuse me, and death. And that would be, and I think we see that in Martha's testimony that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world, who doesn't do the things she thinks he should do, or wants to do. And the way I saw this written about this past week, and the way I was processing it myself, is in the title that I mentioned, Disappointment in the Divine. And what I think John's gospel as a whole, the message is trying to proclaim to us, is that the divine mission and the divine plan and the divine um, desire of God is so much bigger than anything that we can think or imagine or want. And it's ultimately to defeat the powers of death and sin and bring God's kingdom and life into the world. And how God's doing that, we don't necessarily know, and we don't necessarily understand, and yet we claim faith in that. And so I think John's gospel is trying to proclaim that to you, that in the midst of your life, in the midst of suffering and death and struggle, God's not only there, God's bringing about something that we can't understand, that's ultimately going to be bigger and better than anything we could hope for or wish for in the present moment, even if it's the healing of a loved one, which I can't imagine anything greater than that when they're suffering and hurting and even on the verge of death. And so the story is trying to proclaim that to us, that there's something bigger. And here's where you see it, and I'll show it to you. Martha says, I know that he'll rise again in the resurrection on the last day. In verse 25, Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. And what Jesus does is he brings that last day resurrection, eternity of God's love reality into the present moment in his own person and in faith in him, and invites us to believe that he's the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who is in the world, who's coming into the world, who's bringing something bigger than we can imagine in the world. And then as we go forward, we're invited to be like Martha after Lazarus is resurrected, to look for God's life-giving power everywhere and know that one day it'll come completely into the world. That's all I got today. Have a blessed day, and I hope you can see God bringing life wherever you are.